Hey kids, welcome back to my living room. You might notice that I'm standing instead of sitting, and that's because I have a couple things I'd like to show you. Even though it's a spring day, it's pretty dang cool outside, so we're going to do this little piece from right in the living room. And the first thing I'm going to do is show you our garden. And right out that door, you'll see our garden. This is Meg's kitchen garden, and we set this up so she can walk right out of her kitchen and right out there and get all her vegetables and her herbs in a very convenient manner. And you'll notice it's all set up, but there's nothing growing there yet. That's because it's a little early. And back there, you see 3 of our beehives. And I think we'll spend a morning one day reading about bees, and we may even go out there if the weather's warmer and look at those bees up close. And all the way in the back is Sleepy Creek Wilderness Preserve on that mountain back there. But in between is our garden. So let's see how things work in this garden. Well, first of all, as you might imagine, we plant some seeds, and these happen to be black pepper seeds. They come in little packets like this, but then you take them out of the packet like this. These little guys are the seeds, and Meg always starts them in these little buckets to get them started. So right there, you're looking at recently planted peppers. And they've been giving them she's been giving them a little time indoors where it's warm, and we keep them watered. And they start like that. Look how fragile these little guys are. But it doesn't take long for them to start looking like this. Now they're really getting healthy, and we're starting to see some growth. That's pretty dang cool, isn't it? Then, and it doesn't take too long, they start looking like this. Now, when we get some little warmer weather, Meg's going to take these out of the house and out of these little buckets and plant them right out there in the garden. But I want to read you a book about gardening, but since it's so cold, I'm just going to go back to my favorite chair where it's warm and comfy, and I'm going to read to you guys. Be back in a sec. Okay, kids, now we're back in the living room. The garden's right out there, and it's much warmer in here, and the light's a little better for us to read a book. And today we're going to read a Frog and Toad story from this book, Frog and Toad Together. And if you look at it, you can see that it's a well-loved book. Somebody has scribbled on it with a pen and written down here, "I can read," and got really enthusiastic and marked up the back as well. So do remember, one thing we don't do is write in our books. But a lot of people love Frog and Toad. There's a little guy named Caleb in Mrs. Snow's class last year who loved Frog and Toad. And the biggest fan is Mrs. Miller, who teaches first grade at Inwood Primary. She's a big Frog and Toad fan. So, as you might expect, the name of this story is The Garden. Frog was in his garden. Toad came walking by. "What a fine garden you have, Frog," he said. "Yes," said Frog, "it is very nice, but it was hard work." "I wish I had a garden," said Toad. "Here are some pepper seeds. Plant them in the ground," said Frog, "and soon you will have a garden." "How soon?" asked Toad. "Quite soon," said Frog. So here are Frog and Toad in the garden, and they're admiring the beautiful flowers that also grow in gardens. So Toad is now off to start a garden. Toad ran home. He planted the pepper seeds. "Now seeds," said Toad. start growing. Toad walked up and down a few times. The seeds did not start to grow. Toad put his head close to the ground and said loudly, "Now, seeds, start growing." Toad looked at the ground again. The seeds did not start to grow. They had just come out of the pack, and Toad put them in the ground, started talking loudly to his plants, and then he got his head down there and said, "Get going." Toad put his head very close to the ground and shouted, "Now, seeds, start growing." Frog came running up the path. "What is all this noise?" he asked. "My seeds will not grow," said Toad. "You are shouting too much," said Frog. "These poor seeds are afraid to grow." "My seeds are afraid to grow?" asked Toad. "Of course," said Frog. "Leave them alone for a few days. Let the sun shine on them. Let the rain fall on them. Soon your seeds will start to grow." So there's Toad. He's still yelling and shouting. And here along comes Frog and says, "Rain, sunshine." And in fact, when I was reading this book in Mrs. Snow's class a little while ago, one of the little boys said, "Hey, they just need sun and rain." And in fact, another little boy in Miss Harmon's class said the same thing. So you kids know what's going on. That night, Toad looked out his window. "Drat," said Toad. "My seeds have not started to grow. They must be afraid of the dark." Toad went out to his garden with some candles. "I will read the seeds a story," said Toad. "Then they will not be afraid." Toad read a long story to his seeds. He thinks they're afraid of the dark. He's got some candles. He's got a nice book. Remember, it's fun to read a story and a book almost anywhere, even under a tree like Ferdinand the Bull. All the next day, Toad sang songs to his seeds. And all the next day, Toad read poems to his seeds. And all the next day, Toad played music for his seeds. Toad looked at the ground. The seeds still did not start to grow. "What shall I do?" cried Toad. "These must be the most frightened seeds in the whole world." Then Toad felt very tired, and he fell asleep. So he's been up all night. He's been reading books. He's been telling them stories and singing. He's been reading them poems. He's been playing the violin. Anything so his seeds wouldn't be afraid to grow. "Toad, Toad, wake up," said Frog. "Look at your garden." Toad looked at his garden. Little green plants were coming up out of the ground. "At last," shouted Toad, "my seeds have stopped being afraid to grow. And now you will have a nice garden too," said Frog. "Yes," said Toad, "but you were right, Frog. It was very hard work." So look, Toad wakes up after all those days of singing and reading and playing music and having candles, trying to get his plants to grow. They started to grow by themselves. So I think you'll find that if you let nature take its course, your plants will grow. So here's a thought. Someone in your family must know about gardening. It could be your mamaw, it could be your pap, it could even be a neighbor that might know about gardening. I think what would be a good idea as we go into spring and hopefully get some sunshine and warmer weather, that you might want to go out there and plant a garden for your family. So ask around, ask about seeds, find a little patch of ground out back, maybe in your backyard, that you could plant some seeds in, get it ready to go, and just see what happens. Try to grow a few things. What's interesting is we have a little friend named Duncan who sent us videos from where he lives, and he's about 9 years old, and he started his first garden, and he is so excited, and we're really going to keep in touch with him to see how his gardens grow. So that's a good activity while we're home on this break, isn't it? Right into spring and summer, you can grow your fruits, not fruits, I don't think. You can grow your vegetables, carrots, peppers. You can grow onions. We've got potatoes out there, tomatoes, all sorts of great things, and you'll be able to see them grow, and then you'll be able to eat them. So why don't you find a project that you can really sink your teeth into? Don't forget, though, that plants do like to be read to. You saw how fast this guy popped up. So also take a book out in your garden once in a while and read a story. Thanks, kids. I will see you next time.